Oh, hello there. It's John from Barefoot Accounting. I just thought I'd answer a wee question that I quite often get asked, and it's how much should I charge? And it's a bit of an art as well as a science getting pricing right, and there's loads of books written about it. But I just thought I'd give a brief overview. If nothing else to say, well, if it's causing you a few headaches, don't worry about it. That is normal. I'd be worried if you weren't. I think the main thing to look at are two parts of the problem. One is how much people are willing to pay, and the other one is how much can you provide the service for or make the product for. So if you look at one, how much is a customer willing to pay? Now this involves getting into the mind of your customers, and it's not as scary as it sounds, because let's face it, we all spend more of our time as customers than business owners really. So try and put yourself into their shoes. I might actually do another video on that one, because there's a few little tricks I've found quite useful. So that's one thing, getting into their minds. And the two things you want to start looking at is their perception of what you offer. Like, what problems do you solve? You know, how is it really of benefit to them? The other one is what their alternatives are. You know, look at your competitors, look at sort of outside the box what they could do. And there's always one that often gets forgotten. There's always do nothing. You know, maybe it's the wrong time for them, it's something else is of more importance, or they'd just rather keep their heads in the sand if you are solving something to solve a real imminent problem. Maybe they're just like, well, I'm not too fussed on that. And you don't want to be that pushy salesman, really. Well, maybe you do, I don't. The other thing is, how much does it cost you to make something? Now, this is a bit tricky. The first thing I'd say, and the biggest mistake a lot of people make, is include everything. And actually not just stuff now, stuff maybe a little bit in the future. Not like, you know, when you're a global corporation, 10 years down the line or something, but, just next year, are you going to need to invest in some other equipment? That kind of thing. So it's not just, I buy a gnome for £10, if I sell it for anything more than £10, I made a profit. It's, well, what about the whole administration behind that? You've got to allow for that, you've got to allow for taxes, and you've got to allow, more importantly, to pay yourself out of all of this. I think sometimes you see business plans that's so close to the bone, you think, well, one bad month, or, can you really live on sort of £2.50 a week? So just have a look at that one. Where things get a little bit difficult as well is looking at these two things. It can sound very clear cut, but really the biggest question is capacity, and this is something I'll go into later. This is a huge one. There's a case of how much can you actually produce realistically? How much can people, for example, is there a market out there? There's no point producing 150 gnomes a day when you can probably only sell 2. You just end up producing lots of stuff to sit in your stock room. Excuse me. You right there. So bear that in mind. And there's also another thing as a trade-off, because you might make your overheads more expensive, but then you might be trying to go for a really high-end product. Think of the quality. A good example, if you look at, say, Ford and Ferrari. Ford sells a lot more cars, but then not many people can afford a Ferrari. That doesn't mean that they've both got, valid business models. So just consider that, because I always love in the accountancy books, I always say there's a trade-off between price and volume. Up the price, you'll sell less, but you might make the same turnover overall. That's true, but I don't think you could take a Fiesta, even sell it for half the price of Ferrari, and expect to sell any of them. So that's something to bear in mind. So I guess it's probably confused a little bit, but if it gets you thinking, that's good. The main thing I would say is this is the kind of general cop-out. Have a look at what your competitors are doing, and the good competitors, maybe people who are a little bit further down the road than you are selling, and that maybe is a kind of a benchmark of roughly where you want to be, because from a customer point of view, if you're more expensive, they're going to want to know a reason for it. If you're really cheap, they might be thinking, oh, are you really budget, or do you not know what you're doing? Another thing as well is if you do go in too cheap, what if all your competitors know something you don't? Maybe at a certain point, they've got VAT registered and you've not thought about that, and then suddenly you're like having to hike your prices by 20%. So just bear a few things in mind. Anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts about pricing, because it is a biggie, and I'll probably do a few more videos about some of these points, because it's quite fundamental. But I think the main thing I'd like to say is keep things dynamic. The infrastructure and cost you need to service 2 clients is very different if you've got 200 clients. So you want to bear all of this in mind, because things change. And I think the worst thing can happen is people set up a business plan, think that's my business done, that's me away. It's not quite like that. And also, if you think about this, if you've not got any clients when you first start off, or any sales, it is a bit of a leap into the unknown, and you really have to kind of have a little think of how you're going to balance things, how you're going to sort of scrimp and save to get things going, do the DIY MacGyver-esque form of business until you've got the cash coming in to get your infrastructure to help support you grow even more. Anyway, that's me. Cheerio.